Everyone is watching the surface. Taiwan, tariffs, tensions in the South China Sea. But what if those headlines are just the cover story? What if the real war between the US and China isn't about islands or ideology, but about minerals buried underground? Right now, there is a shadow trade war raging, a war for control over the rare earth, metals, and atomic materials that power fighter jets, AI, chips, quantum computing, electric vehicles, and nuclear submarines. And while politicians talk about freedom and security, behind the scenes, they are fighting over who controls the elements that control the future. What if the fight for Taiwan is about chips, but also about who holds the gate to the world's most advanced mineral supply chain? And what if the West is already losing? Let's dive in and find out. A big thank you to today's sponsor, CleanTech CTV. US reliance on bypasses. Let's be blunt. The United States is dangerously dependent on China, not just for the raw minerals themselves, but for processing, refining, and separation, which are the true choke points in the global supply chain. Here is the reality. 70% of US rare earths imports come from China. China also controls 85 to 90% of global rare earth refining and over 90% of graphite processing. Beijing also leads in gallium, germanium, and tungsten, all essential for semiconductors, lasers, and aerospace systems. And it goes deeper. Even more obscure minerals like fluorspar, used to produce hydrofluoric acid for semiconductors, lithium batteries, and uranium enrichment, are increasingly subject to Beijing's export control. The US doesn't produce any acid-grade fluorspar domestically and relies on imports, much of which still trace back, yes, to China, even if rerouted through intermediaries. That's become the name of the game, rerouting. In the wake of China's 2024-2025 export restrictions, US companies started sourcing through Thailand, Mexico, and South Korea, often using shell entities or third-party processors to mask the Chinese origin of materials. On paper, the supply chain is diversified. In practice, it's still heavily tethered to Beijing. To make matters worse, China has begun consolidating its mineral exports into centralized, state-monitored trading platforms, giving it not just control over supply, but over visibility, timing, and pricing as well. The uncomfortable truth: even when the US owns the mines, China often still owns the middle. Until the United States invests in domestic processing infrastructure, including for materials like fluorspar, it will continue fighting for tech dominance with one hand tied behind its back. Taiwan double role. Taiwan is often viewed as the center of the global chip war, and rightly so. Semiconductor giant TSMC produces more than 90% of the world's most advanced logic chips, powering everything from iPhone and AI servers to F-35 fighter jets and quantum computing prototypes. But here is the lesser-known layer. Taiwan's chip dominance depends not only on engineering, but on minerals. The fabrication of cutting-edge semiconductors requires a steady supply of ultra-high purity critical minerals. Fluorspar to produce hydrofluoric acid, essential for etching chip patterns. Rare earths used in polishing wafers and in lithography systems. and gallium and germanium used in high-frequency and optoelectronic devices. Most of these inputs are either mined or processed in China. So, if Beijing were to cut off or restrict completely access to these materials, even without a single chip crossing the Taiwan Strait, it could effectively slow or choke Taiwan's chip production. In other words, controlling the upstream mineral supply chains is a stealthy way to control the downstream chip supply. No need for military confrontation, no need for blockades. Just turn the valves off at the refinery. That's why this mineral war isn't just about rare earths, it's about who commands the global computing infrastructure. And Taiwan is the hinge between physical materials and digital powers. As nations race to control the future of energy, AI, and advanced manufacturing, one lesser-known mineral has quietly become a central player in this global chess match: fluorspar. While the media focuses on lithium and rare earths, fluorspar is the unsung hero, enabling nuclear fuel, lithium-ion batteries, semiconductors, high-voltage insulation, and even advanced military-grade aluminums. Fluorspar is the only natural source of fluorine used to produce hydrofluoric acid, an essential input in a high-purity uranium conversion, chip making, EV batteries, and more. Here is where it gets geopolitical. Over 60% of the world's fluorspar is produced by China, Mexico, and South Africa, with China alone dominating the high-purity supply chain. The US, which hasn't had active fluorspar production since 1990s, is now scrambling to secure domestic sources as the critical mineral tug of war heats up. With tensions rising between China and the West, especially in the nuclear and AI sectors, reliably sourced US-based fluorspar has become a strategic priority. Given its status as the foundational ingredients for producing uranium hexafluoride, known as UFC, for enriching uranium to create the fuel that powers clean, reliable nuclear energy. Enter CleanTech Vanadium Mining Corp, stock ticker TSXV, CTV, and OTCQB, the stock ticker, this is over the counter, it's CTVFF. While they are best known for their vanadium projects in Nevada, CleanTech is making bold moves in the fluorspar world, and they are doing it in one of America's most prolific but long-dormant fluorspar belts, the Illinois Kentucky District. Their newly acquired Campbell-Kreutzer project in Livingston County, Kentucky, isn't just historically significant. It could help reshape U.S. fluorspar independence. This company is tapping into geology that has already produced over 3.5 million tons of fluorspar, and it's surrounded by modern infrastructure and major U.S. industry players. This isn't a theory, this is action. The Campbell-Kreutzer fluorspar project spans roughly 250 acres of mineral rights in western Kentucky, right along the Big Creek Fault system, home to numerous historical mines. According to historical records, the mineralization at Campbell-Kreutzer is textbook. Carbonate-hosted, fault-controlled fluorite that starts near surface and extends 400 to 700 feet deep with consistent grade continuity along the 3,500 to 4,000 foot strike zone. Over 60 historic drill holes suggest serious grade potentials. One historical estimate found 841 tons, averaging 37.1% calcium fluoride, with additional zinc and lead. Intercepts as high as 83% calcium fluoride and zinc concentrations over 9% appear in the record. While this data is historic and not yet NI 43-101 compliant, it underscores just how rich this project could be. And just as importantly, it's plug and play ready. The site is close to water, power, rail lines, and chemical processing facilities. Arkema operates a hydrofluoric acid plant just 40 miles away. Honeywell plans to restart a uranium conversion plant 52 miles out. There is even a zinc smelter 80 miles down the road. This proximity gives CleanTech a logistical edge. So, what does this mean for the bigger picture? If you are the US government, you are looking for exactly this: domestic fluorspar sources that reduce dependency on China, secure infrastructure near nuclear, EV, and high-tech supply chains, geologically proven districts where production can scale quickly. Not to mention that in response to President Donald Trump's declaration of national energy emergency, the United States Department of Interior now has emergency permitting procedures in place, which will take a multi-year permitting process down to just 28 days at most. This isn't just an investment story, it's a national security story. From uranium enrichments to next-gen EVs, high-purity fluorspar is the mineral behind the curtain, and CleanTech is pulling that curtain wide open. Strong projects need, of course, strong hands, and CleanTech is led by a team that knows how to build that. I will start with John Lee, who serves as a CEO and a chairman with the degrees in economics and engineering from Rice University. He's raised over $150 million in capital for mining ventures and led the acquisition of multiple critical mineral projects. Ron Espel, president, brings over 30 years of U.S. mine permitting experience, including leadership roles at BRICS, Gold Strike, and McEwen Mining. He is the regulatory backbone of the company. And you have, of course, Andrew Yeo, a CFO, is a seasoned CPA with a deep experience in the mining sector and financial compliance across multiple exchanges. And of course, we add Alex Baer, Chief Legal Officer, has over 15 years of securities law expertise, focused exclusively on mining, navigating the regulatory minefield so their operations can stay on track. As you notice, this team blends technical, legal, financial, and strategic firepower, exactly what's needed to move quickly in today's volatile resource environments. Fluorspar prices have risen steadily, reflecting its scarcity and rising demand. According to Statista, U.S. acid-grade fluorspar has seen prices above $450 a ton in recent years, a jump from sub-$300 levels just a few years ago. And with the Department of Energy and the Pentagon pushing for domestic sourcing, and with the downstream users in semiconductors, clean energy, and defense urgently looking for US-based supply, CleanTech's fluorspar project in Kentucky is not just promising, it's timely. Add to that the rising demand from AI chips, electric vehicles, and the looming green energy shift, and you've got a perfect storm, one where CleanTech could emerge as a key domestic player in the fluorspar revival. In a world increasingly defined by resource warfare, CleanTech Vanadium Mining Corporation is doing more than just digging holes. They are reviving a critical mineral district with real geopolitical weight, and they are doing it with experience, precision, and vision. Fluorspar might not be flashy, but it powers everything from semiconductors to nuclear power plants. And if CleanTech succeeds in Kentucky, they could be delivering one of the most important ingredients for America's technological independence. If you are watching the future unfold, keep your eyes on CleanTech. Remember, there are always risks in investments and there are no guarantees of any kind. Always do your own research. Thank you.